Well, hello you. Let's talk about scales. Primary red scales, to be specific. So if you haven't watched the scale introduction video, go back and take a look at that just so you know what's going on in general with this whole system, right? The entire point of me introducing the scales in the way that I'm going to talk about in this video series is to build up the skill level slowly and in a way that makes sense for each student. But to that end, when I start with my very beginning students, I will start with the D major scale for violinists. And if I'm lucky enough to be working with a violist one-on-one, I'll transpose everything down to G major. But typically you're working with violin more than viola. So we start with D major, and I only have them work the ascent at first, just getting up to the top. That's all I work on with them for the first lesson or two, depending on the student, of course. Some of them will pick it up right away and we can move on. Others, it might take a few lessons for them to be comfortable with it. If you're working with the finger pattern exercise from Barbara Barber's Fingerboard Geography, which sounds like this, it's usually pretty easy to help them stitch the scale together by telling them, okay, play the first measure of the D string and first measure of the A string. They just leave off the... That will help a lot of them. Some of them that doesn't work for. You just have to play it by the student. So we work the ascent up first, and then I work the descending. And soapbox moment for the descent. Make them use their fourth finger. They might have a hard time with this motion, with getting that fourth finger over there. I have another video coming that's going to address that situation. Some of them will pick it up right away, but you have to make them use their fourth finger. That's my soapbox moment. You can make them use it on the way up if you want and have them play the opens on the way down. That's how the flesh system does it on the higher scales. I think that's kind of weird, but whatever. If you want to do that, do that. Just make them use it at some point. Make them use the fourth finger. So once we've done a few lessons and they're comfortable with the ascent, we'll start working on the descending scale. And then I just work having them put the two together. Nice and easy. We stay there for a few lessons, make sure they're nice and comfortable. I feel like I've said that a lot, but it's true. You want to make sure that they are nice and comfortable with that scale before you move on. Because again, the point is to build it up slowly. If you make them move on too quick, on your own head be it. Now, like I said, if I'm lucky enough to be working with a solo violist, I will transpose this down a fifth and work G major. I like working the inner strings at first for the dexterity of it. I think it helps them build that skill quicker. Right? Rather than doing A where they're on the outside strings and it's easier, I like them to get the coordination of the inner strings. But if I'm working this in a mixed class of an orchestra where I've got upper string and lower string instruments, I'll do it in D major just because that tends to be the easiest one to coordinate between all the instruments. You know, the basses will still have to shift, but I mean, basses have to shift from the beginning anyway, so might as well get them used to it. So in the curriculum that I teach, I'm not having them read music with the pieces that they're working at this point. We're usually doing Jingle Bells or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star at this point. And I have a different system in a different video where they are not reading the actual notation for those pieces because they skip around. But for the scale, since it's all stepwise, I have them working with the written notation straight from the beginning because I want them to get used to seeing the notes. And the stepwise motion is just easier for them to digest at the same time as learning the scale than it is to digest with the piece, I think. So I keep them with the D major for a while until, if we're talking a Suzuki sequence, I usually, around the time of lightly row, when that starts becoming comfortable, that's when I'll have them move over to the A major. And here's the thing I like about this system. I have them play the D major, and then I say, okay, great. Now do that same thing, but start on the A string. Nice and simple. And they play the A major scale. It is that easy. I love this as long as they have that relation going. And at this point, you can use that to talk about transposition, especially if you're working something like Twinkle where you can move that around and show them what it is. I find that even the youngest kids can handle the concept of transposition, even if you don't necessarily use the word. Although I always try to use the right word. You can also talk about the structure of the scale at this point, and maybe play the scale in a different mode just so that they hear the weirdness of that, and compare the D major and the A major and say, look, the structure is the same, so they sound similarly even though they're different notes. It's never too early to get them started on that sort of ear training of listening to this and how does it sound, and is it listen to your ear to make sure that it's accurate rather than relying solely on your fingers. I will usually have them start working the D major arpeggio at the same time that I have them working the A major scale. Again, building up slowly, because adding the A major scale is not a new skill really. They might think it is, but again, because we're just moving them over, they don't have to do anything new, they just have to think about it differently. And again, I will show them the notation so that that's where they can see the difference. So as soon as A major is comfortable and they've got the arpeggio down and the D major arpeggio down, I will go ahead and move them down to the G. Same deal. Just play that same thing, just start on the G and they'll be nice and ready to go, and they've got all three of those basic primary red scales down. Now some of them will notice, hey, we played a scale that started on the open D, the open A, and the open G, so we must start on the open E next. And this is where I'll make a judgment call based on the student. Some of the younger ones, I'll just say, oh, you need 2 strings to play a scale. And that is usually a sufficient enough answer for them. Oversimplified, sure, but don't want to complicate things too much. If they're an older student or one who I think can handle it intellectually or might be interested even, I might go into the whole octave discussion and how we can play a 1 octave E major scale, but we'd have to shift and that would be all up on 1 string, and we're not doing that sort of stuff yet. That's a little ways down the line. But I only talk about it if they ask. I don't even bring it up if they don't ask or if they don't notice. So that's it. That's the beginning of the primary scales. Those are the red ones. It's nice and easy, nice open stringy stuff. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the primary blue scales. Make sure you do the liking, the subscribing, the bell ringing, and all that stuff so that you know when that's coming. Follow me on all the socials. I'm that KJ Bell on Instagram and Twitter and TikToks and all of that stuff. Happy scaling. Should be well on their way to success at this point. I don't know what that means. I'm just trying to do an outro and I'm not good at them.